All right. This was quite an event. Quite an event. They had a big sit down here with the press, in which the entire cabinet acquitted itself very, very admirably. First up was Pam Bondi.
Says was mistakenly deported. The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now,
That's a lie.
Paperwork, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs, if they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job.
Thank you.
Wait a minute.
You are doing a great job. You are the best sugar baby this town has seen since Dolly Madison, honey. You keep going, sweetheart. So you've got an attorney general who is willing to lie, one lie after another, about a legal proceeding. A little bit about Garcia's case. He was detained in 2019 alongside 3 other young men who were soliciting employment outside a Home Depot. Officers with the Prince George's County Police Department repeatedly asked Abrego Garcia whether he was a gang member, which he denied. He was taken into ICE custody, with agents arguing that local police had verified that he was an active member of MS-13 with the Western Clique in New York, based on his Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie and the words of a confidential informant. He's never lived in New York State, by the way. Pretty hard to join the gang when you've never actually been to the state. The details from the informant, which officials have not disclosed, did not result in Abrego Garcia being charged with a crime or otherwise implicated. Nothing came of it, U.S. District Court Judge Paula Zinnes wrote. Abrego Garcia has never been arrested or charged with any crime in either the United States or El Salvador, according to public records and his attorneys. Everything she said there was a lie, saying the 2 courts confirmed he was an MS-13. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. They found there was really nothing there. That he's in the country illegally. He entered the country illegally, but he was issued an order by a court that he was allowed to stay in the country because of credible reason to fear for his life. Why was he fearing for his life? Because a gang, Barrio 18, not MS-13, had threatened his family and tried to force him into joining the gang as a shakedown of the family food business.
Right.
This is the kind of person, this is part of what's so tragic about this. You look at Abrego Garcia, somebody who escaped this terrible situation in a country where you can't have a successful small business without some gang coming to shake you down. He escapes to this country. He gets married. He has a family, becomes an apprentice to a sheet metal union. This is the kind of person who, if you treat him right, will be fanatically patriotic, more patriotic than the average American, because this is the country that saved him from that situation and gave him that opportunity. Instead, you treat him like a criminal, which he was not. Again, he was not. He was escaping from gangs. He was not a member of a gang. So everything she said there is a lie. This whole display was just grotesque. So then Stephen Miller weighs in with his own lies about the Supreme Court decision. It was a big win.
The Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
anything
Court's
to get
asking
him back?
Yeah, no, the apprentice sheet metal guy who's never actually been convicted of a crime in any country, uh, family man. Yeah, no, I'd be terrified if he lived next door to me. So again, throughout this, they just repeat the lie that he was a member of MS-13, something that's been completely debunked. That was debunked 6 years ago in court. And then he lies about the meaning of the Supreme Court decision. He's honing in on the fact that they ruled that it's not clear if courts can force the government to act in a situation that involves a foreign nation. But they certainly ruled that they need to bring him back. And what part of what's really remarkable about this is the administration itself acknowledges that it was a mistake to deport him. If he
Right.
was not legally allowed here, then what mistake are you acknowledging?
Right.
Supreme Court on Thursday instructed the government to take steps to return a Salvadoran migrant it had wrongly deported to a notorious prison in El Salvador. In an unsigned order, the court stopped short of ordering the return of the migrant, Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, indicating that courts may not have the power to require the executive branch to do so. But the court endorsed part of a trial judge's order that had required the government to facilitate and effectuate the return of Mr. Abrego Garcia. So he's distorting the foreign policy element of that to make it sound as if they were all good with this. 9-0 decision. They were all good with this. The liberal media is distorting it like they do. All right. So then little Marco, a traitor to his own people, as we will see, maybe more than a lot of you may realize. This was what little Marco, formerly little Marco, had to say about this.
Understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We want.
Okay, so he's lying about him being in the country illegally. Again, they keep lying and lying about this because they kind of have to justify everything else that they're arguing. Once again, arguing that the court ruled that they can't interfere in the foreign policy of the United States. Now, understand as an American citizen, because the administration is acknowledging itself that it was a mistake to deport him. So what's to stop them from deporting you to a foreign country and then saying, oopsie?
Right.
What's to
Right.
stop
If it's not in their
the
hands
same-
anymore. Right.
Right. The same exact legal theory would allow them to disappear any American citizen to a foreign country without any authority being able to interfere. If you're comfortable with that, I'm sorry, you're a fucking moron.
Well, yeah, obviously. And in this case, which we'll get to more thoroughly later, the foreign governments whose toes we dare not step on is clearly
Right.
doing this in the first place to curry favor with our government. That's clearly why he's doing it. They
Yes.
already named his country the safest place in South America.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure
Yes.
that's true. Yeah, I'm sure there was nothing corrupt about that, right? I'm sure that wasn't part of some quid pro quo kind of thing.
Has anyone told him Americans don't have the tourist dollars to spend?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump,
CNN's
his policy
fault.
is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago, and they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over, and that's why nobody watches you anymore? You know, you have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, these are my
That was Caitlin Collins that he was addressing there. The Chuds got very, very excited about that. He owned her. He owned her. So here's a little bit about Marco Rubio that you might not know. We might not be privileged to have such an outstanding Secretary of State if they had applied the standards to his grandfather that we're applying to Abrego Garcia.
Rubio's grandfather was ordered deported when he came to this country, and ultimately actually was not deported. He was in the country illegally, was not deported, and was retroactively given some form of asylum, which all that is to say, he took advantage of a process that existed for him, just like many of these immigrants do. Maybe they are in the country illegally, but they go to a judge and they make their case, and that's a process. It was a process that worked for Marco Rubio's grandfather. It was a process that worked for him, and he's sitting there in the Oval Office now saying that process should not be available to everybody else.
And that is where these people are really the scum of the earth. For your ambition to so completely override any ethics you might have. It's in his biography, so clearly he knows the history of his own family. And yet, this could be your grandfather, man. This could be your grandfather that this happened. Your grandfather entered the country illegally to escape Castro. This guy entered the country illegally to escape Barrio 18. If they had applied this standard to your grandfather, you would not be sitting there as Secretary of State today.
Yeah, no, he's just a complete worm. I mean, they're all just the lowest of the low.
Just a cabinet of criminals.
Yeah.
So Representative Jim McGovern sent a letter. We'll have a little more on this later. Read my new urgent demand for answers. The American people deserve to know what Marco Rubio and Bukele agreed to. If this deal is so great, why are our own leaders afraid to make it public? Release it now. Now, you know what? They really missed an opportunity here, right? Because MS-13 is a terrorist group, and they're saying they have the right to do whatever they want with anyone who's affiliated with this group. They had Bukele right there in the Oval Office, who apparently has been investigated for his own ties to MS-13. We are concerned that the Trump administration has failed to fully investigate alleged ties between President Bukele and MS-13 gangs, now designated as foreign terrorist organizations. These ties, confirmed by the Treasury Department in their 2021 sanctioning of Osiris Luna Meza and Carlos Amilcar Marroquin Chica, noted, quote, in 2020, Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele's administration provided financial incentives to Salvadoran gangs MS-13 and 18th Street Gang Barrio 18, that's the gang that went after Garcia's family, to ensure that incidents of gang violence and the number of confirmed homicides remained low. So he's paying off MS-13. He's paying them off. They could have gotten them right there. Look, you had an MS-13 affiliated terrorist sitting right next to the president, and you let him get away.
That's right. Should have sent him to CCOT. Oh, wait, he owns CCOT.
Oh, yeah.
He runs CCOT.
See, therein lay the rub. This poster, Timothy Snyder, put it very well. On the White House's theory, if they abduct you, get you on a helicopter, get to international waters, shoot you in the head, and drop your corpse into the ocean, that is legal because it is the conduct of foreign affairs. Yes, exactly. This is, so you hate immigrants. Fine. Do you understand the kind of power that you are giving to the president? For anyone who claims to believe in the Constitution, it's interesting. A lot of conservatives like to carry around the Constitution right in their pocket. They'll wave around the Constitution. We had a revolution because we did not, well, for a lot of reasons, but part of the core premise was you don't want power concentrated in the hands of a king. This was a kind of radical idea at the time, right? Most governments were monarchies in the Western world at that time. So you get rid of the king because people don't have the kinds of protections that, according to our Constitution, they are entitled to. These rights are inalienable. You have taken a bunch of amoral, narcissistic, psychopathic oligarchs and put them in a position where they are testing whether they can get away with the absolute arbitrary exercise of power. We have never had anything like what they are trying to do in a technologically advanced modern nation. You got Elon rifling through the government systems with AI, getting everybody's information. They have a capacity to build a police state that the monarchs of old could never even dream of. The fascists of old could never even dream of. You're talking about a very wealthy country with virtually unlimited resources, testing to see whether they can take down all of the boundaries. And this case and this man has wound up being their test case for what they can get away with. That is why it is so important that they don't.
Yeah, and this foreign government that is supposedly outside the jurisdiction of the United States and outside the purview of the Supreme Court is just a government that the United States bought into being
Right.
our puppet, which is essentially what Bukele is. He built this, supermax prison. He started locking people up in his own country without due process, which I'm assuming get more into it in the next piece. And he comes to the United States smiling from ear to ear the whole time he's there because he knows he has a loyal friend now in Donald Trump. Not just a loyal friend, but he has a cash cow. They're getting paid to put these people up, $20,000 a head. And it only cost them $6,000 at most, I would argue, given the conditions there. It's probably less than that. It only cost them $6,000 a year per inmate per year to house people. So what is his incentive to look into possible mistakes, and B, even more importantly and more severely in this case, what is his incentive to side with the court over Donald Trump when clearly he has a very, very powerful, I won't even say ally, he has a backer in Donald Trump. Right. I mean, the Trump administration has essentially bought his support. So where do his loyalties lie, to Trump or to the court? And since he is foreign, since he's a foreign government, he doesn't answer to the Supreme Court anyway. So that's the worst of both worlds. That's the absolute worst case scenario. It's worse than Guantanamo. It's worse than Guantanamo.
Well,
because this now gets into the realm of, well, it's foreign policy. It's not foreign policy. It's not foreign policy. We basically bought off a stooge to torture whoever we want to when we send them there. And because he is the president of a sovereign nation, we can't then tell him what to do once they're in his hands.
Yes. And we'll see this in the next piece. It's much easier to take people outside the jurisdiction of the law than it is to remove the law from the people. They put a lot of thought into this. And they say, okay, man, who do we have who's going to do whatever we want and we can just pay them off, who wants to align with our whole vision of a modern day feudal order? Hey, that guy Bukele, that screwball who made Bitcoin legal tender, that guy, he's friends with Elon, he's friends with Pete. I bet we can make a deal with him. Anybody we want to get rid of, we'll send them down there. When the courts complain, we'll say, hey, it's out of our hands. Foreign policy.
Right, exactly.
You don't have any jurisdiction in foreign policy. They didn't stumble into this. They gave, not Trump, but their legal people gave this a lot of thought. How can we disappear people in a country where everyone's supposed to have equal justice under the law? We send them to a third-party country and then claim foreign policy privilege.
Right. Exactly.
Please clap.